Welcome to a special edition episode of our Legacy of Excellence podcast, where we highlight individuals and organizations who stand out for their exceptional contributions to healthcare and life sciences. My name is Anna Maria Palucci, and our special guest today is Christina Busmalis. Christina is a life science and technology professional with over 28 years of experience in business development, sales, consulting, and management. As an executive at Google Cloud, she led the go-to-market strategy in Europe, Middle East, and Asia for life sciences with a focus on big pharma. During her tenure at IBM, Christina was the Global Director of Technology with Novartis. She focused on digital reinvention, leveraging disruptive technologies across the life sciences value chain. Christina is also a board member at the AO Foundation, a global network of surgeons and a world-leading organization specializing in the surgical treatment of trauma and musculoskeletal disorders. She has proven expertise in creating and developing new business models to support her clients' large-scale digital transformation. She was a final medalist for the IT Consultant of the Year award in 2004, which was awarded by the British Computer Society in the UK. She is widely recognized as an industry thought leader and frequent speaker at pharma and digital-focused conferences in Europe. Thank you so much for joining me. I mean, for me, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you because I look up to you for your accomplishment. You've worked for great companies with global footprints such as Google Cloud, IBM, PwC, quite impressive. And so, covering two very complex verticals, financial services and life sciences / healthcare. How does one get there? What is that journey like, and how has it been for you?
It's funny. It has been a long journey. It's getting close to 30 years, which is kind of scary in some sense. But I mean, I started my life in technology as a kid. So I started programming when I was quite young. My father was a math teacher and did computer teaching at his high school. So I got a computer at home when it was during break time. So that set me on my path. That technology was what I was interested in. Started my career very much in consulting. So back in the early 90s, that was a nice place to land because it gave you the opportunity to do lots of different things, learn from many different organizations, get to travel, all those great things when you're young and in your 20s from that side. But and that brought me over to Switzerland. I was lucky enough to have an opportunity to come here. It should have been 2 years to help with a banking solution. 2 years have now been 25 years. So that's, I guess you take what the opportunities you get. That's probably the first lessons that I learned. I moved into to life sciences really kind of by chance. Actually, I was doing a lot with financial services in consulting. I was with Pricewaterhouse, which became PwC, which then became IBM. And I wanted to see what IBM was like. So I was really working all my time in the consulting world, which kind of still stayed as its world of PwC. So I explored outside the consulting to see what IBM could be. And I was given a couple of different opportunities. And one was to actually be the technical leader for an account that IBM covered here in Switzerland, which was Novartis, so a large global pharmaceutical company. And I had that choice, had a couple other banks that I could have chose, and I decided, okay, let's go for the pharma side. And it was, back in 2006 was probably, I would say, my best career decision I ever made, because I got into an industry that I just found, wow, it has so much. There's so much to do, right? I think it was more the awareness of the immaturity of the technology within the industry, of how important that industry is for us individuals, because we all want to be healthy, we all want to live healthy lives, we want our family to be healthy, and there's very much a connection there. And that's what kind of got me excited to be in that industry and to really to learn the industry and learn how to apply technology as it keeps changing and advancing into that industry. And so after I did that with IBM for a dozen years. So for 12 years, I worked with Novartis around the world, around different areas of business. Had a great experience. I saw the opportunity also to expand what I can do, but do it in other places. So I became the industry technical leader for IBM for life sciences globally. And that helped to basically try to drive repeatability and scalability in a company like IBM. So how do you drive the strategy? How do you bring the technologies to many pharmas from that perspective? So that got me into that area. Again, I'm a technologist, so I always liked technology, and AI came about, well, it was always there, but it came in the forefront more around 2012, 2013, with most people heard of Watson. They don't probably talk about Watson anymore, but it kind of at least put everything on the radar. So I said, I want to get involved in Watson. I started to do projects, at clients with Watson. And when IBM brought up Watson Health, I really wanted to get part of it. So here, staying in Switzerland, had the opportunity to lead the Watson Health business for life sciences, both here in Europe and in Asia. And it kind of moved me from being an advisor and a consultant and an architect to being a sales leader. And interesting move. And I have no regrets. I think it was fantastic. I had the opportunity to really build an organization, bring people on, focus and prioritize what we need to do to drive business, and it really drives success. So I think that those areas of getting understanding and applying, and then taking that and scaling that in an organization like Watson Health was really a great learning experience for me. And then, afterwards, I finally left IBM to find new opportunities, and that's where I joined up with Google, doing similar that in IBM of driving the life science business here in Europe, but also, again, from a more of a cloud side of things and a business consulting side of the world. But it's been a journey. It's been a fun journey, and I think what I've learned out of it is probably a few things. One is take the opportunities when they come. You can set that path that I want to do this, this, and this, and I want to have 3 years here and 4 years here and 6 years. It doesn't work that way, my perspective. So never stop learning. I think that's really important. And you have to keep almost reinventing yourself of what you want to be, and find that industry, right? And I think for me, it is healthcare life sciences that you're really passionate about. You have to find something that gets you excited to do, and that industry. And then, if you want to be the solver, if you want to be the leader, if you want to be the change person, all those things, you can decide what you want to do with it, but find some place to land and grow from there.
It's so interesting because I resonate with so much of what you just said there. In my life, I always felt like there was always imperfect opportunities that ended up having tremendous learning and tremendous upside that I didn't even think about. And the things that I would be most excited didn't end up quite being what I wanted them to be. But as long as you're malleable and flexible, life takes you where you're destined to go. And I genuinely believe in that. And I feel like your story is kind of, it's kind of along the same lines. And I want to take it a little backwards, just for the young people watching this podcast, because we have an audience ranging from very young to very, very senior experienced individuals. How did you start in consulting? I feel like in consulting, you need to have quite a bit of experience in order to be in that role, and quite a wide knowledge set to be able to make recommendation, do proper research, and be involved in those serious conversations.
Yeah, and it's a good point. I think, and that's probably how consulting has matured over the last, 20 or 30 years, if you want to say. When I got into consulting, it was in the 90s. My skill was very much IT. It was very much programming. And in that time period, there weren't that many people that had that deep skill in organizations. So they did work with consulting organizations to drive implementations and build something, right? Whether it's, financial systems, or, it varied back in the 90s and early 2000s. So I do think if you go into consulting now, it's different than it was, right? So I think that's a very important thing. But again, I think as a consultant, you have to in some way be able to be a chameleon, if you the little lizard, right? That's able to change and approach and learn and adapt very quickly and move around. I think that's still the truth. It's still needed. But having, if in someone's career, you usually have a T-shape, right? Where you go across and you're general in some stuff, and then you're deep in one area, or 2, 3 areas. It depends on the skills, and that deepness is where you need to drive as a consultant to make sure that you're able and trusted from that advisory perspective. But it's
Very
a difficult industry. It's a difficult industry, I think now, maybe compared to what it was, but it's still a very important industry.
I agree.
As you
Yeah. And, I would say that being a chameleon and very malleable and being able to adapt is also very important to oversight in architecture and leading teams and also sales. So
Yeah.
all of your roles have that, I would say, common thread. Is there anything in addition that's special in regards to each role that you've had, particular skill sets that you employed that were different and you feel like really applied in each?
It's a great question. I think when you move into leadership, as your career progresses, you always can be a leader, but your leadership may be bigger or more impactful. It's embracing the people that you're leading. I always feel that you have to be, I like to talk about being authentic and that people know what I say and what I do is who I am, right? So I'm authentic in that way, and transparent. And sometimes transparency can get you in trouble, or directness can get you in trouble. But I think that's, I think now in my career, I'm probably less of a solver. I want to come and solution something, to more that I'm bringing things together to move things forward, or to build, organizations, or enable people in my team, or in different across teams. And that's, that there's reasons that you enjoy it. I enjoy doing that, but also I honestly and openly, I think, especially in the area of technology, it's very hard to keep up to date on everything. You just can't, right? So you have to, again, that T shape is really important, because you just can't say, oh, I can do it all, because you can't do it all. And finding that. So I think, the adaptability is important, the authenticity is important, and building that trust and drive, I think, is really important as you go forward. And some people want to be those leaders, and some people don't, and I think that's also okay.
We need a little bit of everything, right? In our communities, in our groups, in our teams. Yeah, it's a great point. And often in different times of your life, you assume different roles as well. And it's important that you do, because otherwise you can't relate to those people that are in different roles than you are. And so I would love to kind of, I want to maximize our time together, because you have a wealth of knowledge in many areas. So I'd like to pick your brain a little bit, especially as it relates to healthcare and life sciences. From your experience, what you've learned, talk to us a little bit about the interesting things that you've done or you've seen at the different companies you worked, and the nuggets of knowledge or sort of goal that you can share with our audience about what you know about healthcare and what's exciting and interesting right now.
Yeah, if I again, I look back, and I've been in the health, specifically in healthcare, life sciences, for about 18 years, I guess. And it's a wide ranging journey. And if I go back to one of my most interesting projects I had in the early stages, right? So let's go back into, I think it was 2008, 7, 8, so a long time. And for young people, it's probably a very long time ago. I was on a project with the client, and it was focusing on decision to do drug development. So it's called DDP process, so DDP. And interestingly enough, back then, the decision to develop wasn't really based on evidence. It was kind of based on gut and estimates of potential market potential, but not really based on a lot of medical evidence. From that, obviously there was evidence, right? But decisions were taken not from data-driven decisions, which we talk about now. It seems obvious now, but back then it wasn't so obvious. And I remember, the discussions we had, the interviews we had with some very strong senior leaders in this company, and it was very interesting to see how technology, and in that case, it was predictive analytics, could really help them make a decision better. So that was an eye-opening to say, okay, if you had this information, could it help you make a decision? Yes, absolutely we could. So, data-driven decisions seems obvious now. It was just not there before. And the reason it wasn't there was the data interoperability, and getting that data, right? So getting all the data, which, the same problem exists today. That's why I brought it up, right? But, it was, we use the term, I don't know if you know the word gulags, but the information gulag. So gulags was concentration camps during World War II. So not a nice expression, right? And, so how do you have all this information sitting in a prison that can't be used, right? And so that was back in, early, mid, 2008, 2009 timeframe. Great learning expedition for me to learn the processes, in a pharma company, but also how can you infuse data intelligence and predictive analytics and stuff. Another interesting project I had, which again, is I'm going to go back, was, again, Watson came out, AI was seen as being, wow, it's going to do everything. And I think it was 2015, 16, I got involved in we were in IBM, we were running it was like an innovation. Teams came together here in Switzerland. We all create our own teams, and you could come with the best idea, right? So, and then there was a competition, and you had, these pitches you made, and, you got a team became a winner, and they got to get investment to do something, right? And so my team, it was all of us, we're all somehow in life sciences, a couple very, very senior scientists, myself, and a few other of us that are consultants. And we started to focus on really, we wanted to focus on our industry, and we focused a bit on how can you bring in technology or bring in AI specifically to automate specific documentation. And the documentation here was around health technical assessments, or HTAs as they're called. And I don't know if you're familiar with this, but when a pharma company brings drug to market, they also need to be technically assessed, and every country does it differently, right? So they have to, prove its efficacy, and in all the different areas. I'm not going to dive into the process itself, but it's quite a big focus area of health economics and outcomes research. And again, when you're a pharma company, you have to do this in every country. Every country has different documents, and obviously language requirements, and the data has to be local in the countries, and all these things. And it's time consuming and expensive. So here, AI, we could automate this, right? That has to be it. This has to be the solution that'll help us. And we learned, and we actually won the pitch. So we got the money, we got a little bit of funding, we got some time to do stuff. We started building some things, which was great. But we realized pretty quickly that it wasn't ready yet. So what we wanted to do and what the technology could do wasn't there yet. And that, again, the big problem was you need a lot of data, and you needed some commonality. And because of the way that the healthcare systems are organized and so different by countries, it wasn't easy to do. Now I would look now, and I'd say, okay, take that same problem. Could we do something now today? And I think maybe it's not going to make the whole document, you press one button and the document's perfect and everything's ready to go. But I think with generative AI and having the right data points and data sets, maybe we're at a point that this could be possible. So I think that project for me was more about learning, taking the hype of what the possibilities are and making the realism of what you can do. And then the last thing is probably more today, right? And it may not be the sexiest thing to talk about, but I think a lot of the challenges that we see, again, I'll speak mostly in the pharma world, is bringing, accelerating time to market, time to society for drugs. So how do you bring drugs from identifying the molecule to getting it out to market, to obviously helping individuals like ourselves to be healthier, and et cetera. And there's a lot of areas that can affect that. And there's so much work going on by many companies, startups, big companies, small companies, everything like that. But one thing that we were working in the last year or so in Google with one of our larger pharma companies. They wanted to focus in many areas, but one thing they really wanted to focus was, how do we actually improve reduce or improve our failure rate in drug discovery? So, as you probably know, most things fail. We're in the high 90 percentile, right? So it's the success rate is not very good. That's just experimental world of try and early in drug discovery, and what we've been doing with them is not focus on the algorithms per se. That's not, that's something that'll come, but how do you bring that capability to reduce, if you reduce the failure rate, you obviously bring drugs faster to market, right? And you save more lives. So one thing to do for that is to allow scientists to learn from failures, fail fast, and have the data available to do the work, because a lot of this is analysis, whether it's in the wet lab or outside the labs itself, and a lot of it's outside the labs nowadays, in silico, as you would call it. So we've been working with the company to really help them change the way they do drug discovery from a data-driven decision perspective, from bringing data together, allowing it to all different types of data coming there. On, you can use the word platform if you want, whatever buzz terms you want to use, but being able to have the scientists have access to information, access to data, not people say, store their data, this is my data only, right? Changing the capability, which will allow then these scientists, amazing data scientists, to build different algorithms, right? So it's that, you can almost say that plumbing, but the plumbing is super important. Just like when you build a house, right? If you don't have that working really well, you're not going to be efficient. And I think that's another area that I think people want to do the fun, exciting stuff, which I love, but you got to do the base stuff too as well.
And I heard you say, I heard you speak during one of your speeches, your talks, about matching the studies with the right participants as one way to go at enhancing the data, obviously, by having more good quality data. Then I heard you talk about genomics and how that plays into it. And also about new technologies like 3D printed nanorobots, and being able to administer the drug at the right place at the right time. And so all of this with enhanced outcomes, as you were saying. Is there anything else that you were thinking, or that you think can bring value to this process of sort of better outcomes, better commercialization?
I think one of the things that we sometimes forget about is the patient itself, right? Or the healthcare consumer, and how do we meet that the different journeys of the different types of patients that are out there. I think that's also very important as we go forward. If you, and I'll interchange between patient and healthcare consumer. They're somehow the same, and that maybe a patient is someone that's now being in the healthcare system, but in reality, as a consumer of health, it should start much earlier on that side. But I think we're seeing depending on generation you're from or how tech savvy you are, what your expectations are, right? So how do you, what are we, assuming? Many people, especially in like the generation, Z or millennials, don't have a GP, a general doctor, right? They go to urgent care when they're sick, right? So how do you actually ensure that you're meeting them? But then there's also different people that are still in more the traditional model, right, of getting that. So I think there's the balance of that that's really important. And probably one of the first areas is around awareness or education. So how do you bring people and educate them in a way that they can understand, not the medical lingo that potentially the doctors understand, but that the patient can understand or the consumer can understand, and allows them to manage their health as they go forward. And I think it's a big area, and we can dive in there as well. And I think that's where digital health sits in sometimes. There's again different aspects from it, but it's one that I think is really important. I've been on some panels with doctors who are brilliant, but all they talk about is the science and the outcome from a science perspective, and not what does the patient need and what are the expectations from the patient side, and how do you meet them. I think that's also very, very important on that side.
Yeah, and this is kind of, I've seen this as a recurrent thread. What does the patient need versus what does the healthcare provider need, and how does that meet? And it's almost, I've seen a few very interesting companies in Canada that I've interacted with lately. One that's helping physicians automatize their processes and workflows, and allowing AI to enhance their work so much that reducing by a significant percentage of their hours spent daily in administrative tasks, and even in their conversation with patients. So I find that companies like that, companies that automate forms, everybody's doing a little bit and pieces and bits. Very interesting. And I do have the hope that overall, at some point, they will all converge to create a meaningful geography of solutions that patients can then navigate more effectively towards better care.
Yeah, I think that's a nice wish, right? I don't know, I guess we have, healthcare is very defragmented, right? So, as we get into, the system in Canada versus the system in the United States versus how it is in England, everything's different, right? So nothing's the same. That's the first thing. And some of these disruptive startups that come and bring some really creative areas will prioritize some countries and not others because, it does come down to revenue.
Because of legislation, yeah.
Legislation and ease of use. If I look at it from a consumer, it's confusing. I mean, it is, right? We're not educated. I mean, maybe we have the education, some people have the education, but it's still very difficult to figure out how you can, especially when you do get sick, how you can get healthy and how you stay. And I mean, I think we were talking before around, there's this obviously there's a lot of buzzwords out there. I mean, metaverse is another big buzzword that's out there. This is the great way to get patients engaged and be interacting with them. And maybe it is for that percentage of people, right? Especially the younger generation who are already, avatars and using metaverse. But, when you're really sick and you really just want to be taken care of, going in a virtual world is probably not the answer for you, right? Just being able to have the information given to you in the right way that's personalized for you, that's understandable for you, that's clear of what your pathway is to go forward is not always is not a technical challenge sometimes, right?
Yeah, and I would agree with you. And I think when you're talking about that particular patient population, not healthcare consumers, but strictly patient population, clearly, especially the fact that the VR sets are very bulky and heavy and not user friendly, and it almost seems like a burden having to connect and learn how to use it. That at this point is definitely not anywhere close to a possibility for and anything engaging for somebody that's sick and in pain and not feeling well. But I think there are also, I'm actually a believer that at some point there will be value there, especially with the advent of the AI technologies at such a rapid pace. I think that things will move, and especially once the goggles, or not goggles, the glasses become more seamless and more easily integrated with our way of life. I think that there's opportunities there for, let's say, long-term care. Imagine all those elderly residents stuck in a room. They could be in universes and they could be with their families sitting at the dinner table for Christmas instead of right. I think there's opportunity. I just don't know exactly when that will happen, and I can see that it all depends on the spectrum of where the patient or the healthcare consumer, like you've used the term, where they are in their journey. I think that all things have a place and a time. So
yeah, I agree with that, and that I absolutely agree with. And I think that's really important. Some of the learnings I had is, when is the right time to do something, right? Because it's sometimes not exactly what you want to do is not ready for it. But I do see value, of course, into that and into robotics and all that. There's so much exciting areas there.
And I love the fact that you have such a balanced approach. There's so much buzz and there's so much excitement about AI right now. It's definitely the word to use anywhere you go with anyone you talk to. But fundamentally, it all comes down to us as human beings and how we relate to each other and how we want to be related to. And I think that, technology is definitely an enabler. And I find that without technology, there is no better future. There's no hope for the future. There's only going backwards, right? And so it all depends on how we're going to shape it. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit about cloud technologies and how, in general, how they enable technology and how they enable improvement in healthcare, if you can speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing is just to define what we mean by cloud technologies. I think there's a lot of ambiguity again of what we talk about, right? So, some people may say, well, cloud is just that infrastructure, it's the replacement of servers and storage that existed, beforehand. And yes, it is, but it's more than that, right? It's being able to adapt faster, to allow things to come up and come down, to hit the peaks, to basically bring that power you need to have to be actually more secure. People may not believe that, but a cloud environment, of any of the big vendors out there, whether it's Google, Microsoft, or AWS, or IBM, or Oracle, any of them, they're more secure than a data center sitting in whatever company, right? So it's bringing all those capabilities, and it's and specifically you mentioned AI. I mean, one of the reasons why AI, again, has been around since the 1950s. It's continuing to mature and mature and mature, but a big portion of that maturity is also the fact that it needs more and more processing capabilities, and so cloud does provide that. As we now, we'll probably talk about generative AI and large language models. They need a lot more capability to process stuff than earlier AI models. So cloud computing in general, I think is in a few years from now, we probably won't even use the word cloud, because it's just going to be,
that's the only option.
That's it,
Yeah.
right? It's just, it's
Yeah.
just mainstream. But it has changed the way that companies can adapt and bring new solutions to market, that they can manage their costs differently, from that side, that can, small startups can actually become successful really quickly without having those high costs up there. And then if you then say, okay, what does it mean for healthcare, and in life sciences? It's the journey's still going, and I think again it varies by country, because maturity of healthcare and healthcare data, a lot of countries, it needs to reside and stay in the country, right? So you have to, whereas cloud computing, it can be anywhere in the world. Well, no, it can't, right? So you need that digital sovereignty, that control perspective, that your data is not leaving the country, whatever it is, right? So I think it can bring, it's already bringing that secure aspect, right? So being able to have, again, when we talk about data from health, it needs to be secure. Really, it's as important as your banking system, right? So how do you ensure that you as an individual are comfortable where your data is, from that side? So and then I mentioned data interoperability as a problem back in 20 years ago, which is still a problem today. How do you bring all these different data together? And I think that's still not, it's still a journey. We're not yet solved, but being able to have capabilities like cloud computing to allow data to seamlessly work together, to bring data together, to be able to prepare the data, is very important. So I think that's part of where the cloud journey has taken. So security, compliance, you could put in there, data interoperability, scale. Obviously the scale is the important thing, to be able to grow fast and build, not these big monolithic applications that were out there, 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago for that matter, but to build these piecemeal areas that can then connect through in the world of cloud. It's exciting. It's a journey that we're on, for sure.
So what's next for Christina? Where are you heading? Where's your vision and your aspiration?
Yeah, it's well, I'm still very passionate about this industry that we're both in, right? So how do we, and again, I think there's a lot more that needs to be done. I'm quite excited of where technology continues to mature, especially, and we're not, I'm not going to say ChatGPT is the savior of everything, or generative AI is going to, it's a journey, and I think in this industry we're still just figuring out how do we make it, how do we continue to be that enabler to help the doctors, help the patients, help the system work better. So I want to be part of that journey. Now, is that, what am I going to do? Where am I going to do it with, or who am I going to do it with? I'm still figuring that out. But that's, I think, is taking the next technology as they come, because there's going to be something new and something new and something new from that side. It's interesting because I've worked in very large organizations in most of my career, right? And especially both at IBM and at Google, they're horizontal companies. I call them horizontal, meaning they work across all the industries, some more than others, but they focus on scale. And I think those kind of companies, and a Microsoft and whatever, they're needed, because you need the scale. You need the scale when we talk global. You need to get far and wide, from that side. But I don't see them also as the disruptors potentially. So,
Yeah.
I think the disruptors are coming potentially from the smaller companies, which may become a big company or maybe get bought into the big company. But and I think that's a question for me is do I become more of that disruptor or do I become more of the scale? And I don't know. I don't have the answer for that yet.
Right. Any particular area of interest in terms of technology? And I know you said it could be many things, but is there anything that really kind of piques your interest a little more than others?
I mean, I think AI still piques my interest, from that. So using data, and it could be AI, it can be predictive analytics, it can be even descriptive analytics, but using data to make better decisions is still where I think is very important, even more and more important as we are infused and overloaded with data. So that's still an area that I get very excited about. I do think the reality, whether it's augmented, virtual, XR, there's so many different terms that are coming out. I think it's very exciting. I also, about 6 months, almost a year ago now, I became a board member for an organization called the AO Foundation, which is basically it's focused on bringing the most innovative technologies for musculoskeletal, so spine, trauma, orthopedics for the surgeons. So it's very much a surgeon network, which I find super interesting because it's just I'm taking a totally different perspective. So taking the process world, taking the pharma world, look at the patient, and then look at it from a surgeon perspective. You get a whole different view, and there I see a lot of focus on that augmented reality of how do you start to use that. There's some universities that are doing all their medical training without cadavers in the musculoskeletal area. So being able to use augmented reality to do preparation and analysis and quote unquote surgery as you go forward. So I think that's also a very exciting area that I'm very much enjoying to learn. Again, learning new stuff, right, as you continue to go forward.
Yeah, I think we have a lot in common, actually. Those were pretty interesting to me as well. And so I guess that was a natural reason why I gravitated towards chatting with you. And I really enjoyed our conversation today. I look forward to staying connected. And if anybody is interested to contact you, how would they reach out to you? What's your preferred method?
Best is through LinkedIn. It's always easiest to contact me through LinkedIn, and I'm on there regularly. So you can see my profile, and happy to talk.
Thank you so much for your time, Christina. We wish you the very best, and we look forward to a next episode together at some point in the future.
Absolutely. Sounds like fun. All right. Take care.
Thank you. You too.